Welcome back to LeapTalk English, where real conversations help your English grow naturally. I'm Mary.
And I'm Albert. And Mary, I want to start today with a word that most people find surprisingly difficult to say.
Just one word?
Just one word, two letters, completely harmless, and yet, for a huge number of people, one of the most emotionally charged words in the English language.
Let me guess. No.
No.
And you are absolutely right that it is harder than it sounds because, on paper, no is just a word, a clear, complete, perfectly reasonable response to a request you cannot or do not want to fulfill.
And yet, that intellectual understanding does not make the actual moment of saying no any easier, because the difficulty of no is not an intellectual problem, it is an emotional one.
And specifically, it is almost always about relationships, about what we fear the no will do to how someone sees us or feels about us.
Right, because when most people imagine saying no, they are not just imagining declining a request, they are imagining the other person's reaction, the disappointment, the annoyance, the possible withdrawal of warmth or approval.
And that imagined reaction, real or not, triggers something genuinely uncomfortable in the body, something that feels a lot like threat.
And the brain, which is deeply wired to protect social belonging, responds to that threat by pushing hard for the safe option, which is yes, because yes keeps the peace, yes preserves the relationship, yes avoids the discomfort of the moment.
Even when yes creates a different and often larger discomfort later, the resentment of having agreed to something you did not want to do, the exhaustion of carrying commitments that were not truly yours, the quiet erosion of the boundary between what you genuinely want to offer and what you feel obligated to give.
And that erosion, over time, is one of the things that contributes most to burnout. Not just work burnout, but relationship burnout, life burnout, the feeling that you are living for everyone else's needs and somehow running out of room for your own.
And the painful irony is this: the people who find no the hardest are often the most giving, most considerate, most emotionally attuned people, the ones who genuinely care about others and genuinely do not want to cause disappointment.
Their sensitivity, which is a genuine gift, becomes the very thing that makes boundary setting so difficult.
Because they feel other people's discomfort acutely, and they would rather take on extra burden themselves than be the cause of someone else's discomfort.
Which sounds generous, and in some ways it is, but it is also a kind of unspoken agreement. I will manage your discomfort so I don't have to feel guilty. And that agreement, however kindly motivated, is not sustainable.
Because no one can endlessly absorb other people's emotional weight without eventually running empty.
And there's something else worth naming, something that sits underneath the fear of other people's reactions, and that is the belief, often unconscious, that our value to others depends on our usefulness to them.
That we're worth loving because we're helpful, because we show up, because we say yes. And if we say no, if we become less immediately useful, we risk becoming less lovable.
And that belief, wherever it came from, however old it is one of the most quietly damaging things a person can carry into their relationships.
Because it means your relationships are always slightly conditional in your own mind, not in reality, but in your fear. They love me because I show up. What happens if I stop showing up the way I always have?
And so you keep saying yes, not from genuine generosity, but from fear. And the difference between those two things matters enormously.
Because genuine generosity is sustainable. It comes from a full place. It gives and still has something left.
But yes from fear is not generosity. It's self-protection in a generous costume, and it tends to deplete rather than replenish, and eventually it stops working. The yes becomes hollow, the resentment grows, and the relationship suffers anyway, just more slowly and more confusingly than an honest no would have caused.
So what actually changes when people start learning to say no? Because I want to give this conversation somewhere useful to go.
I think the first thing that changes is the relationship with yourself, because every time you say yes when you mean no, you are telling yourself something. You are telling yourself that your needs and limits are less important than managing other people's reactions, that your discomfort is less real than theirs, that you don't quite have the right to take up the space that a no would require.
And every time you say no, clearly, honestly, without excessive apology, you're telling yourself something different. that your limits are real and legitimate, that your time and energy are yours to direct, that your relationships can handle honesty.
And that second message, practiced consistently over time, slowly rebuilds something that years of yeses can erode: self-respect, genuine self-trust, the sense that you have the right to exist in your own life on your own terms.
And the second thing, and this one often surprises people, is the quality of the relationships themselves.
Because people often imagine that saying no will damage their relationships. And sometimes, yes, a no does reveal that a relationship was built on someone always being available and accommodating, and those revelations are painful but important.
But in healthy relationships, honest no's actually deepen trust, because when someone knows you mean what you say, when they know your yes is genuine rather than obligated, they can actually receive your generosity without wondering if it's real.
The person who always says yes can never be fully trusted to mean it, because you always wonder, are they doing this because they want to or because they can't say no?
And the person who sometimes says no, clearly, kindly, without drama, when they say yes, you know it's real, and that realness is the foundation of genuine intimacy.
And the third thing, and this is the practical piece, is learning what a good no actually sounds like. Because I think a lot of people imagine that a no has to be either apologetic and over-explained or cold and blunt.
And neither of those is quite right.
A good no is direct but warm, clear but kind. It doesn't require a lengthy justification, and it doesn't abandon the relationship in the moment of declining.
Something like, I appreciate you asking, but I'm not able to commit to that right now. Or, that's not something I can take on at the moment. Or simply, I need to say no to this one.
No performance of guilt, no excessive explanation that invites negotiation, no coldness that suggests the relationship doesn't matter.
Just honesty, delivered with care for the other person without sacrificing care for yourself.
And that balance, care for them and care for yourself simultaneously, is actually what a healthy relationship requires from both people, not just from one.
And perhaps the most important thing to say is this: a relationship that cannot survive your honest no was never quite as solid as it appeared.
And a relationship that can, that actually grows stronger because of the honesty, that's the kind of relationship worth building your life around.
Okay, let's go into our word tour.
Let's do it.
First word, overcommit. To overcommit means to agree to more things than you realistically have the time, energy, or capacity to fulfill, taking on more than you can actually manage.
For example, she had a habit of overcommitting because she found it almost impossible to disappoint people in the moment, even when she knew she would struggle later. Or, overcommitting is one of the most common causes of exhaustion and resentment in both professional and personal life. Repeat after us. Overcommit.
Overcommit.
Next, boundary. A boundary is a personal limit, a clear line that defines what you are and are not willing to do, accept, or tolerate in a relationship or situation.
For example, setting boundaries does not mean pushing people away. It means defining the terms on which you can genuinely show up for them. Or, she realized that her exhaustion came largely from having no boundaries around her time and her energy. Repeat, boundary.
Boundary.
Next, wired. When humans are described as wired for something, it means that behavior or tendency is built deeply into us, as if it is part of our biological programming.
For example, humans are wired to seek social belonging, which is exactly why the prospect of someone's disapproval feels so physically uncomfortable. Or, we are wired to avoid rejection, because for our ancestors, exclusion from the group was genuinely dangerous. Repeat, wired.
Wired. Next, erode. To erode means to gradually wear away or weaken something over time. In emotional language, it describes how something important slowly diminishes through repeated small compromises.
For example, years of saying yes when she meant no had slowly eroded her sense of her own needs and preferences. Or, resentment erodes relationships quietly and from the inside, often long before either person realizes what has happened. Repeat, erode.
Erode. Next, attuned. When someone is emotionally attuned, they are highly sensitive and responsive to the emotions of the people around them. They pick up on feelings quickly and deeply.
For example, she was so emotionally attuned to other people that she often felt their discomfort before they expressed it, which made boundary setting feel especially painful. Or, being emotionally attuned is a genuine strength, but without boundaries, it can become exhausting. Repeat. Attuned.
Attuned. Next, obligated. When you feel obligated to do something, you feel that you must do it, not because you genuinely want to, but because you feel a sense of duty or external pressure.
For example, he said yes, not because he wanted to help, but because he felt obligated, and that difference showed in how resentful he felt afterward. Or, the difference between helping from genuine desire and helping from obligation is significant for both your well-being and the quality of what you give. Repeat. Obligated.
Obligated. And finally, replenish. To replenish means to restore or refill something that has been used up, to bring something back to its full level after it has been depleted.
For example, genuine generosity replenishes itself because it comes from a full place, while yes from fear tends to drain without restoring. Or, she learned to think of her time and energy as a resource that needed to be replenished, not just constantly given away. Repeat. Replenish.
Replenish.
And those were today's Word Tour words and phrases.
Together, they capture everything we explored today. Why no is so hard, where that difficulty comes from, and what genuinely changes when people finally start saying it honestly and kindly.
And wherever you are with this, whether no comes easily or whether the word still ties her stomach in a knot, please know that the difficulty is not a character flaw. It is just a very human response to a very human fear.
And learning to work with that fear rather than around it, that is some of the most important work a person can do.
It really is. This is Albert.
And this is Mary. Thank you so much for listening to LeapTalk English. We will see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.